Hi, welcome to Play with APPSPY, and I am Rick, and this is Vainglory, of course. And what I wanted to bring up today was the recent 1.15 update, which changes a few small things in the game. Nothing too drastic, apart from one thing that I would like to bring special attention to, mostly because Ringo is kind of my favourite character, and but I also feel that with newer players who are going to be experiencing the game, it adjusts things a little bit. It makes Ringo kind of a less viable character almost. I mean, not entirely. He's still, good if you can use him. But let's just start with the general overview of stuff that's changed. Not a whole lot as it happens. I've got my notes here. Well, my notes, I mean, of course, the patch notes. So, the respawn timer clock refund per turret kill is down from 15% to 10%. So, not a huge difference, but it does also mean that for every turret you kill, you'll get your respawn timer is a lot less than it used to be. That's no longer the fact. It is now a bit higher, and you can no longer just sort of overwhelm the enemy if your team manages to fight together and take over. Another quick change is that the jungle monsters their strength now scales with your gold rather than your time spent. So your team's net gold that they've earned, everyone's gold that they've earned throughout the game, now affects how powerful the jungle monsters are, as opposed to how long the game's been going on for. Nice little change, I think. It's going to make things a lot easier for teams who have been focusing more on pushing on the turrets rather than grinding in the early game. It's going to make things interesting when fighting, because I personally like to grind a fair bit before I really get involved in the fights. So that's going to be quite interesting to see how that affects people playing the game and whether they are going to really do much with it. What I would like to bring the most attention to is Ringo and his Twirling Silver ability. Now, Twirling Silver, if you're not a huge Ringo player, is his ability that gives him 6 seconds of improved attack speed and improved movement speed. Now, they haven't really done much to adjust that. If I just double check, yep. The attack speed has now been rounded off. It used to be 55%, 64%, 73%, 82%. It's now just 50, 60, 70, 80. Not a huge change. It's not particularly noticeable in the game, but every time you level up, it increases your attack speed that you get from it. However, what has changed is the energy cost that it requires to use it. Now, that has also been rounded off, but to a much higher degree than it was previously. It used to be that even early game, if you had an ability power-up, if you bought, say, the Hourglass power-up, you could keep hammering that button and it would generally come back in a short amount of time, usually just before the effect runs out, and you wouldn't use up that much energy. Now, however, you can't just really keep doing that. You get about 4 good goes of it without any sort of power-up attached, and then you're gone. That's it. You've got to go back and you've got to respawn. Interesting move, I think. Mostly because it's one of the moves that makes Ringo an incredibly dangerous enemy, particularly in the early game, and particularly if you can build him right and you're up against a team who can't handle a good Ringo. So I've just used it 4 times now, and now I've got to wait. So obviously, the way I tend to build Ringo is very weapon heavy, very focused on building up his weapon attack power and relying on that to increase his attack speed. I also tend to put a bit of attack speed in there just to really hammer it home. But now you're going to have to drop at least one of those to account for this new amount of energy cost. So you'll probably need to buy a crystal bit, you'll probably need to buy an hourglass, whichever one works most for you. Personally, I would say the hourglass, just because it reduces the cooldown effect, and it increases the number of times you can use it. I don't know why I have a poor network connection on a practice mode when it's me on my own, but never mind. Yeah, it's an interesting little twist that's going to make things a lot more difficult for Ringo players in the coming times. And Ringo's quite a popular character, I've found. Ringo is always kind of there in matches, and it's going to be an interesting little thing to see how players react to that. I, as a Ringo player, not not a huge fan of this change, but that's just because they're nerfing my favourite character, really. Hopefully at some point in the future I will be able to purchase Skye, who is my favourite character, and they never seem to adjust any of her perks or skills or anything like that, so I'm looking forward to getting on with her. But Ringo players, watch out for that. Also, side note, Kestrel's abilities, her Glimmer Shot, the cooldown on that had been increased from 3.3 seconds to 4 seconds to fully recharge her quiver. That's actually been turned back, so now she's a little bit more effective than she used to be. I believe her attack power on that was reduced or something like that. That's stayed the same. The only thing that's changed is the cooldown period, which is a good change. It wasn't a particularly huge change, 0.7 seconds, but those 0.7 seconds can make all the difference in a game. So that's kind of my main concern with the 1.15 update, is the adjustment of Ringo. But we'll see how that actually affects things. The tournaments are coming up, and I'm sure there are some good Ringo players out there, and we'll see how they do with it. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This has been Play with APPSPY. I've been Rick, and this has been Vainglory.